Well, hello. This is the Green Corn Rebellion Show. I'm Gregory Harden II, and today I'm here with James Cooper, who is a city councilor in Oklahoma City's Ward 2. How are you doing today?
I am doing all right. Um, yeah, we'll leave it at that. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Thank you for coming on. First question I have here is where are you from and where did you grow up at?
Sure. So I grew up in rural, suburban Midwest city. Uh, Went to Nakoma Park Choctaw schools, and I feel like there was another question. Did I miss them? Sorry.
Just where are you from and where did you grow up?
Oh, yeah, there you go. There are the answers.
So, like, when you say rural, suburban, Midwest city, so like you lived in what would be or you didn't live in Midwest city limits, but you live like in the zip code of a Midwest city area. Is that what
I'm
you
like
meant
a
by that?
house. I'm like a house divided into like multiple things. So like we were in Midwest city limits. I grew up at like 15 between Anderson and Post Road. And I we moved there in 87 when I was 5. So it was very wooded and hilly and new housing development. That's where we lived. So we were Midwest City zip code, but Choctaw Nakoma Park School District.
Hmm.
Literally, if you just crossed over Anderson, you were in, I think, Choctaw, and then Nakoma Park was to the
Yeah,
north of us. So it was
that's
it was an
interesting.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something. I've never like that whole area to me is confusing of like the Oklahoma County, Oklahoma City metro area. Like it's always been like a mystery to me, the different lines where they line up. Like there's some people that live in Oklahoma city limits, but their school district is Edmond, and then there's some people that are what is it? I think some people there then there's Spencer, then I don't know where Spencer ends and
Yeah,
where Dell City begins.
yeah,
It's that's a complex area in
yes.
general. But I've never met anyone that went to Nakoma Park schools, so that's interesting.
I
um, and what all did you do prior to becoming a city councilor? Where'd you go to college at?
So I went to Rose State my first year, and really loved the first semester, and then just stopped attending the second semester. Um, and that was largely because when I was at Choctaw, or Nakoma Park, kindergarten through ninth grade, I always wanted to be a writer or a film director. And I mean, I wanted to do that at age 5. There was never a doubt. I understand that there are people who are like, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. And I'm not here to judge them. I'm just telling you, I knew. I saw Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3 as a 5-year-old. It's like, I want to recreate those stories. And it never bothered me, the horror. I never had nightmares. I was also watching like Care Bears and X-Men and collecting comics. And Freddy just felt of that world. Like there was no difference to me between Magneto and Freddy. Um, so I just wanted to always do that. And then when I got to Rose, I wasn't studying that, and so it didn't hold my attention. And then OCCC started a brand new production program, and so I transferred there, did academic forgiveness, got my life back together, and yeah, I thought thought I was gonna maybe make a movie or something, but it turns out I'm much better at the writing part than I am the directing and these sorts of things. So transferred from there to OU for film studies, which is more really where my passions are. When I was a junior in high school at Choctaw, because Nakoma Park's kindergarten through ninth grade, and then there's no high school, so we become Choctaw High School.
Yeah.
Um, Columbine happened my junior year, toward the end of that school year, and I just remember It didn't matter which political party you were, you knew who the culprits were. It was Marilyn Manson, it was Mortal Kombat, Doom, The Matrix, horror movies, Biggie and Tupac. And I was like, no, I don't think it is. I grew up on all of that. I haven't been in a fight. I still have not been in a fight. Um, I'm 39 now. So I was like, I'm calling shenanigans. And so I set about as an undergrad at OU as a film studies and political science uh, major major for film studies, minor for poli sci. I decided to study media violence. I was like, I'm going to get to the roots of this. And I didn't know what I was quite undertaking yet. And I was prepared to be wrong, by the way. Um, but what it had ended up involving was like this intersectionality of fields where I started studying psychology, psychoanalytic film theory, continental philosophy. And I'm telling you, just going all the way back to like Confucius and Aristotle and Plato and Socrates, and just kind of working our way back through Thomas Aquinas to, Dante to you name it. I mean, stuff that like my little Choctaw Nakoma Park heart had heard maybe some of these names, but we never dabbled in
Yeah.
any philosophy or stuff. So that was my undergrad, and then grad school was OSU in screen studies, and that was in their English department, and that was just kind of furthering that research. My plan was to do an academic book on media violence. I wanted to look at the representation of violence in media from really 2000 onward, a chapter on video games, a chapter on movies, a chapter on television, and really kind of talk about the allegory, like how these things were reflecting what was happening in society, how it was and I think people always get this wrong about violence and its representations, is that very often, especially the smarter the filmmaker, the violence is a commentary on the society that already has the violence in it.
Hmm.
It's not causing the violence. It is a commentary. You look at something like Scream 2, and it's a critique of it, in fact, and a critique of dumber horror movies that have no real philosophical intent, but actually um, quite problematic. So that was what I did. It was like, undergrad, then grad studies and that work, and then finished a second grad school degree in creative writing. So I decided I wanted to do something more fiction related. So and now I'm on city council.
Hmm. That's cool. Um, Episodes of the Green Corn Rebellion Show are sponsored by Oklahoma Progress Now. Oklahoma Progress Now is a 501c4 organization focused on building progressive power in Oklahoma. Their primary efforts are on developing progressive content for a 21st century audience, coalition, and capacity building across progressive organizations and causes, and working to see elected leaders who are more responsive to their constituents and the needs of the many. Areas of focus include progressive messaging and communications, coalition building and resource sharing, and focused progressive policy goals. You can check out their Twitch live streams, and they go live on Facebook at noon, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Please support this organization. It's a really great organization. It's just getting started here in Oklahoma. Thank you. Now enjoy the rest of the video. So what jobs did you have prior to becoming on the city council?
Mm-hmm. So all through, I mean, one of my favorite jobs, of course. My first job was Frontier City. What was yours?
Mine was McDonald's. It was what was it? Summer of 2017. Um I mean, simultaneously I also worked on uh Tom Gill's congressional campaigns. Technically I had two first jobs. Um
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, so but I mostly usually just say McDonald's because that was the one that I didn't enjoy as much, but it was still an interesting experience. getting to work in fast food, it opened my eyes to a lot of different things that happen in the workplace and whatnot.
Sure.
Yeah.
I am of the firm belief everyone should have to work in retail for at least a year, if not one of
At
the
least
holidays.
2 years.
I mean,
I would
it's
say at least 2 years
yeah.
because like I personally like I worked in fast food for a total of, I guess you could say, 2.5 years. And I didn't work that many holidays, but I did work a couple. And it kind of depends on the holiday, on how bad it is. Like Thanksgiving wasn't as, no, no, no. Thanksgiving was okay. Kind of felt like a regular day. But New Year's, I worked New Year's Day, I think 2018 at McDonald's, and hardly anyone came in the whole day.
Mm,
And I was actually kind of shocked, but then I was like,
I-
okay, I guess that kind of makes sense. But I don't think I ever worked Christmas ever. Maybe
mm.
once, I don't know. But I do remember working Thanksgiving at one point, and that was like almost kind of like a regular day. Um, but like working in fast food, that'll teach you some things, and open your eyes to a lot of different things. I definitely was sick of it by like the second year. After McDonald's fired me, I went to work at Wendy's, and I never liked working at Wendy's. It was the worst
Mm.
experience I ever had in my life. Way worse than McDonald's. Like McDonald's, I didn't dread coming in every day, but like at Wendy's, oof, I couldn't handle it hardly. But yeah, but no, this isn't about me. This is about you. Tell me
I
about your, yeah.
I I
You
yeah.
did.
Well, I mean, mine was like it was just a series of retail jobs. It was 16 year
What was
old.
it like working at Frontier City though? What did you do
Oh,
there?
well, actually, I kind of had a dream job there. My best friend Charity, my next door neighbor, she and I worked the employee food cantina. So we didn't have to interact with customers. We
Hmm.
just got to interact with other employees who we knew
Okay.
because we worked there. It was great. We didn't have to cook. We literally an employee would come, give us their order, and we were attached to like different restaurants, and we would just go pick up their food from these different restaurants.
Hmm.
That was the job. It was incredible. And my most fun memories are this is just silly. Getting receipt paper, and as you can see behind me, I'm a big not just horror fan, but Halloween. But that summer, Halloween H2O came out, and I was quite anticipating it. So I would just draw on the receipt paper H2O over and over again, and Halloween and Jamie Lee Curtis or whatever. Um, no, but it was great. We actually had a tornado strike us while we were there. That was scary, but Oklahoma. Um, and then yeah, from there it was like I got my dream job at Blockbuster for a few years.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
What years was this?
that was from 99 until 2001. Yeah, I was the
Jeez.
assistant store manager before it was over. I That was an experience. I
Like
my own
I like Blockbuster. Like I remember Blockbuster. There was one in Shawnee when I was like younger, but like it closed by the time I was like 7 or 8. But like I went in there when I was a kid a few times with my parents, and that's like something that like I remember that like a lot of people a little bit younger than me, that they don't even know what that is. I just tell them it's like family video, but VHS tapes.
my only sadness with it is that I wish Blockbuster hadn't put out of business the mom and pop video stores, because that was where the real magic was. I would have loved that. But yeah, I worked serving jobs like at the Olive Garden or Stella or retail like Express in the mall in Penn Square Mall. Or so yeah, I mean it was a lot of that. And that was all while I was in school, by the way. I
Hmm.
always worked while I was in school. And then eventually after grad school at OSU, started adjuncting as an English professor at UCO and OCU, Oklahoma City University. And then, adjuncting not just English at OCU, but film studies. And yeah, so and then before I took office, I was teaching as a middle school college preparation teacher on the south side of Oklahoma City at Jefferson Middle School. So it's, and it really has so many ways prepared me to serve on council because this from the retail experience. Uh, Once you work those jobs, you learn how to interact with people of all class backgrounds, all
Yes.
ethnicities, religion. You just start picking up those people skills, um, and you learn. I at least learned. I think it strengthened my empathy um, for people, so I don't yell at someone when I'm mad on a call about, why is my bill so high or whatever. I'm like, "Okay, look, I know this isn't you. I'm not mad at you. I'm really mad at this system, but I'm gonna watch my tone as we talk, right?
Yeah.
So no, I don't know. All and teaching also, because that's teaching isn't just talking at people, it's really about listening to people too.
Yeah. Yep. 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 So, what made you want to run for city council?
Yeah, I mean, it always goes back to that decision not to write that academic book I plan to write. Um, I just realized that you have to think this was 2011, and I came up with the idea of writing that book while I was an undergrad from 2004 through 7 at OU. And remember, it originated because of Columbine in my head. I was like, I want to explore this. And I finally just realized that if I was lucky, NPR or something might cover this book if I got it published, maybe. Otherwise, only other academics were going to read it. And that's not a critique of other academics. It's just that I felt that what I had learned in those 20 years, um, that was not a conversation just for the university setting, that this was conversations we needed to be having in our neighborhoods. Because what I was learning, and of course you already know this, but what I was learning, and I think I could sum it up with Stanford economic research, I found myself quoting a lot during the campaign. And then again, now that I'm in office, I always go back to it. It was research that said that for every year a kid grows up in a better environment, teen pregnancy down, college chances go up, they earn more over their lifetime, they have more stable family environments. And then for the kiddo who doesn't grow up in that sort of better environment, it's associated with crime, income inequality, segregation, and a lack of social cohesion. In other words, a lack of community, and I had seen everything growing up, like as I said, from Nightmare on Elm Street 3 to Boys in the Hood to Fight Club. I'd seen enough to realize what seemed to be ailing us. And it was just like, we've got to better invest in our neighborhoods. Like we have got to make sure that our neighborhoods are walkable, bikeable, well lit with street lights, crosswalks, and students should have access to parks with recreation, and there should be youth centers, and there should be public transit connecting the neighborhoods, right? And the more I dug into our city's history, I learned that vision was the vision for Paseo, the neighborhood where I live. It's the first commercial district that was developed outside of downtown 100 years ago. Um, and the developer had this vision that the only way to convince people to move out of downtown, where most people lived and worked and shopped at the time, um, was if he could develop a neighborhood that had the basic needs in it. So you had your house, you had your walkable streets, they're well lit, but then there would be a part of that neighborhood that would have commercial space for the barber, the pharmacy, your places of worship, your schools, your parks. That was G.A. Nichols' design for the Spanish Village, it was called. And so it just clicked in my head that what we needed to do was re-articulate that vision within a 21st century context,
Mhm.
uh, And that's what I did. And then, the public transit part, that wasn't so hard either, because even though it wasn't public, there was private streetcars that Anton Klassen and John Chartel operated on Klassen. That's what that giant median is in the middle of Klassen Boulevard. And that's what connected folk back to downtown if Spanish Village didn't meet their needs. And so that was my campaign. I was like, I'm running on that. That's the vision. So it was a vision. It was a gamble. I thought, rather than saying, look what they have in San Francisco and Seattle and New York, let's do that here. I was like, look what we started doing and then stopped doing in favor of, annexing towns that were just farmland and these sorts of things. We like, there's a reason why what you said earlier, where it becomes confusing. Am I in Spencer? Am I in Oklahoma City? Am I in Mustang, or am I in Oklahoma City? And that's because in the 50s and 60s, Stanley Draper just went on this, shopping spree and just gobbled up a whole bunch of land.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, my vision was to say we went off the tracks, so to speak. And now, if we really want to honor the renaissance that MAPS has set in motion back in the early 90s, that is making young people like me want to stay here, people want to raise families here, people are wanting to move here, then we need to give them what they want. And that is walkable, bikeable neighborhoods connected with reliable public transit. It's just that easy. And the final straw was, I'd ran once and lost in 14, 15. I already had this vision, and I didn't play it again. Lose, it hurts. It's like a punch in the gut. But the final straw was the teacher walkout.
Mm-hmm.
I just realized how recalcitrant too many lawmakers, especially in the rural parts of the state, are about funding publication. Not all of them, but many. And then I realized, after 2 weeks of going to the Capitol, my students, their families, other teachers, support staff, administration, I just realized that I can beat my head up against a cinder block wall with a legislature that isn't, the numbers are not on our side.
Yeah.
Or I can be a part of the progress we see here in Oklahoma City for the last 25 years. What tipped it was my students telling me mental health, mental health, mental health, mental health. And that was all I needed to hear. When they said that that's what they were missing, and I knew it with them. I was bringing in like Lord and Kendrick and Zelda, and we using that to teach them. And because of that, I wasn't really experiencing the sort of, quote, discipline issues that a lot of the other teachers were. I'm not saying that they weren't acting up. We all know what a teenager is.
Yeah.
But it was World War III time. One of them got out of line. I was like, oh, no, I'm sorry. You're not going to win this. Like, because we're not going to fight. Like, we're not going to have that. You're an adult. You're a young adult. I'm an adult. We're not, So I never did school suspension or detentions or things like this with them. I just basically always like reoriented them back. I'm like, is this getting you toward your goal of making more money than me? It's not. Oh, okay. Well, then what are, and it was just kind of meeting them where they were. But that mental health thing, that was kind of the final component. So our 3 counselors at Jefferson, their task was not mental health so much as it was helping to administer state standard test or
Mm-hmm.
standardized state test. And it's not because they were bad people, those counselors, just they were being pulled in, 900 students, 3 counselors, 900 students. So I literally quit my job to run for council because I wanted to make sure that in MAPS 4, our 1 year our every 10 years ish penny sales tax that we do to fund projects, I wanted to use MAPS 4 to fund youth centers. And we did. And transportation and sidewalks and streetlights. And, you run in this moment, or I ran in that moment I ran both times with the belief that maps was going to happen. I thought maps was going to happen when I ran that first time. I was wrong, but then it was going to happen that second time. I don't think I would have ran otherwise, because you run for office as a elected official, then you have to go battle for the budget.
Yeah.
You make these promises, but you have to battle for the budget. Maps was unique. Maps was a chance to say, hey, we have a regular budget, but I'm going to fight for the things you all tell me you want. We're going to put them in maps. And we did. So it's literally, I get to say to people when I run for reelection to steward the maps projects: promises made, promises kept, end of story. So it's a way of, we can't stop mass shootings, not at the local level. But what we can do is make sure that our kids are growing up in neighborhoods where they're not hearing gang violence all the time. Um, and we can make sure that their neighborhoods are full of public art. And if it's not, then they can hop on transit that connects them to the part of town that does, and help them realize they are somebody and that they are a part of something, their community and the city's Renaissance story. I think when you do that, when you help someone realize their basic humanity, they tend to not want to take away somebody else's humanity.
Yeah.
I think that's also true. That's more for your low income, working class, working middle class. I think that's just as true though for middle class and upper middle class students. Like, we have so taken away creativity and imagination in our school system that, and we've told all these kids, well, we don't tell them. We don't tell them how to solve conflicts. We set them in front of the Avengers, and then we wonder why they want to hurt each other. Well, the movie, people die or people get hurt, tends to be bloodless and off screen. What
Yeah.
message do you think that's sending? Meanwhile, Scream, someone gets killed and you see the pain and the hurt. My guess is someone who watches Scream, it's not a guess, it's research now. I found it throughout years. Less likely to hurt someone if you've seen the pain someone's going to endure versus painless deaths and then no conflict resolution teaching in your schools. So I ran to try and do a little bit to make it a little bit better. Thanks for listening. That was long, but
No, it was good. Episodes of the Green Corn Rebellion Show were brought to you by Addie Sugar Shack, located at 1228 North Interstate Drive in Norman, Oklahoma. Norman's new shaved ice concept. They feature 45 flavor options plus unique snacks. They love the vibe. It's worth the drive. This other question I was going to ask is, what all have you done or been a part of since you've been elected? You've told a little bit about it, but is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
I think so. I'll just give you like a very concrete example. So the year before I won, we secured a matching grant with the federal government for what is ultimately going to be a $30 million bus rapid transit system.
Okay.
The first in the city's history. And that's going to mean, imagine a streetcar marries a bus and they have a child. That is a bus rapid transit. That bus will arrive at a station, not a bus stop or a bus shelter, but a station like our streetcar stations, every 15 minutes, because it has technology that sends to a light, a stoplight says turn green. So when it's approaching an intersection, instead of having to stop, that's where the rapid part comes in. It moves more rapidly than a regular bus or a car. Remember that old streetcar route I told you on Classen? Well, that bus rapid transit is going to go from downtown, that Classen old streetcar route, and then it's going to go onto Northwest Expressway all the way to Northwest Expressway and Meridian. That's going to connect Bifurless, Clark's Barbecue, Integris Hospital, Penn Square Mall, the Asian District, Plaza District, Paseo to downtown Oklahoma City. 20 something percent of the jobs for the city are along that 8-mile corridor. It's just a big deal.
Yeah.
I helped steward that as a public transit trustee before I took office. After I lost that first time, Mayor Cornett appointed me to the Transit Trust. I got to help see that happen. So then when MAPS 4 came, I said, well, I worked with Councilwoman Hammond And we were able to get 2 more bus rapid transits in MAPS 4, one to the south side, one to the northeast side. So together, within the next decade, you'll have 3 public transit systems that are BRT every 15 minutes that will connect the entire urban core. That means, yeah, that means connect people to jobs, recreation, education. What more do we want, right? We know property values rise with that sort of public transit. You know, the transit oriented development comes alongside these sorts of routes. I'm very proud of work with Councilwoman Hammond. She and I also got to craft about $87 million, and which is a crazy number to me. I laugh because I'm like, well, sorry, no, I don't mean crazy. It's a wild number because you know, I was a middle school teacher making $36,000 a year. So the idea that I would have control over $87 million is just like, but we were able to, you know, put money toward sidewalk infrastructure. The city really stopped building sidewalks in the late 40s, as you know, because everyone was going to be middle class, they believed. And once you're middle class, you don't need to walk on sidewalks. What? I grew up very middle class out in that rural suburban Midwest city. And let me assure you, our planned neighborhood had sidewalks. I don't understand. So we're trying to make good on that. So sidewalks, bike lanes, $20 million in bike lanes. And those 4 new youth centers. And then what else am I just like over the moon about? Oh, whew, this one's tougher. We just secured $1.3 million for alternatives to policing in this year's budget. Now, of course, the bad news is, you know, for years, because we defunded access to mental health, defunded public education, higher education, substance abuse access to care for that sort of addiction. Because we did all that and then just put all that on the police's shoulders and said, police, you fix it. No, we didn't give them the training for that. But we asked them to do that for 40 years now. We've asked them to do that. And that's why their budgets are so high, $127 million this next go round. And I think that this 1.3 million that we have is the beginning of rethinking what public safety looks like in the 21st century. So 300,000 of that goes to an alternative response to mental health calls. So we don't know the exact shape of that program yet. We have 12 local residents working with a consultant hired to study best practices related to that topic, and they're still doing that work. We won't know till the end of the summer what the shape of it is, but for instance, in Denver, their STAR program began with 200,000, and right now, like if your viewers, listeners were to Google Today Show and mental health and police, they'd see this van that goes out after 911. Someone's called into 911 and they're in some sort of mental health crisis, whatever it might be. It's not law enforcement that goes, it's trained mental health professionals. And they show up, and that's what de-escalation looks like. And we know that people with mental health are just exponentially more likely to find themselves dead after an encounter with law enforcement. I don't like those numbers. And so this is a good start in a better direction. Or a violence interruption program is another thing. We had 6 proposals, and another one was violence interruption programs. You have like Newark, where they have their violence interruption program, the Newark Street Outreach Team, where the city has hired people with justice involved backgrounds, former gang members. They know their neighborhoods, they know their communities, and they actually go out there with brochures and they're knock knock, what are your needs? And I'm telling you everything from food to clothing, and they give them a number. You call us when you need, right? And then let's say a murder happens and it's gang related. Newark's Street Outreach Team is out there and then knocking those doors again. Hey, is there a retaliatory event about to happen? And that's the interruption part, because the neighborhood trusts them. And because of that trust, they tell them, and then it doesn't happen. And so now Newark, over the last few years, the South Ward has experienced a 50% reduction in homicides. The city is experiencing a 30-year low in violent crime. That is on our list of 6 proposals that I authored last year with our legal team, with the work of Councilwoman Nice, Councilwoman Hammond, the community, after listening to hours upon hours of them calling into city council, telling us about their experiences with law enforcement and mental health coming up over and over again. And people also wanted a non-law enforcement part of public safety. So yeah, we don't know what the shape of any of these 6 things are going to be quite yet, but the city manager's office has set aside $1.3 million to start moving us into some better directions. And I can't tell you how shocking that is to me. Like Representative Karen Bass in California, I was listening to an interview with her on police and their work at the federal level. 47 years she's been doing this work. 47. So here I am, and Councilwoman Hammond, we're 2 years into being on council. Nikki's 2.5, Councilwoman Nice, and we secured this. Is it everything we want? No, absolutely not. But it is a start, and it's a movement in the right direction. So I'm cautiously optimistic and encouraged by that. And I didn't campaign on these sorts of public safety measures, but I did campaign on criminal justice reform. And I think this is about that ounce of prevention. If we can prevent these crimes from happening in the first place, then maybe our jails won't find themselves so full.
Yeah.
So I'm very proud of MAPS 4, and I'm very encouraged by what I think we're going to be able to do with these public safety dollars.
All right. Last question I have here is, what kind of music do you listen to?
Well, if we were talking just before the interview, currently I'm working my way through Rolling Stone's top 500 albums of all time. Not because I think Rolling Stone is some sort of arbiter of taste, but literally I was like, give me a list, make it huge, and I'm just gonna one by one from 500 onward just listen. I don't skip songs. I just listen to the entire album. I haven't even skipped on the list. I don't even know what's coming on the list. I just wanted to be surprised. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, some of my favorite albums are stuff like Dr. Dre's The Chronic, Arcade Fire's Funeral, really love Deer Hunter, almost everything they've done. This album has entire lines. I'm blanking the album, but I really like that a lot. I was just saying to you before we began, Roberta Flack's debut album, First Take, I just think is incredible. Oh God, Missy Elliott, Super Duper Fly.
Yeah.
It's just, that is such a great album. Kendrick's Good Kid, Mad City. The soundtrack to The Last Picture Show, it has like Hank Sr. and Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys. Like, so I kind of just love everything. I was just saying to you also before we started that my best friend Austin introduced me to Slayer's Rain in Blood, and I really enjoyed that. But I love Metallica's Master of Puppets. So if it's good, put it in front of me and I will listen to it. And the genre really doesn't matter. Although I will say, I'm more of an old school country person, whether that's Alan Jackson or Hank Sr. or Bob, than I am. A lot of the new country just really does not resonate with me. I will say on that list, the Rolling Stone list, they had Jason Isbell, and I really like his song "Traveling Alone" a lot. It's a really fine song. So
It's cool.
I'm all over the place.
I forgot to ask earlier. Do you like Limp Bizkit, or did you ever listen to Limp Bizkit?
You're gonna be so mad at me. I loved them at the time. I did. Now I can't. I'm not. They're not my. They're not my cup of tea. No, we were closer together when you mentioned the Deftones. That's
Oh yeah.
more my speed during that time. I'm trying to think if there's any new metal. Well, you'll get a kick out of this, not so much that I like them, but anytime somebody says, and it happens a lot, someone says, "Oh yeah, it's been a while,"
Stained.
immediately my brain and then often my mouth, I just it's been a while, and I just like I mean, just without missing a beat. The only other thing that happens with is when somebody says it's been, and I'm like, it's been 1 week, and I just start.
Yeah. Yeah, my brain works that way too when it comes to certain songs and phrases. Like I remember when I was like in middle school, like the majority of stuff I listened to, like there's two artists, Eminem, Lady Gaga. That was pretty much all I listened to in middle school for the most part. And there's more at that time, there was more Eminem than there was Lady Gaga. I mean, there's still more Eminem than there was Lady Gaga, but like in 2010, 2011, 2012, she was just getting started. But like, so I listened to more Eminem than I did Lady Gaga. But like nowadays, it's like if people say certain phrases or certain words, it automatically brings me back to like an Eminem lyric from like 2003 or something. And I'm like, oh my god, like, and then I'll have that song stuck in my head all day. Like it's so weird. And it's so funny because like now like my brain can't work that way. Like I don't remember songs that easily anymore. I guess like back then it was because I was younger and something to do with that. I don't know. Or maybe it was just because I was literally listening to that stuff all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
now I listen to a lot more stuff, so it's less likely stuff is gonna stick. But yeah, like it's interesting.
Yeah, my best friend Austin, I just did a better job now answering your question than he asked me that question a couple weekends ago, and I just started stumbling over myself. I was like, movies. I can tell you, it's always Halloween, Mulholland Drive, Airplane, um, Candyman, Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, Dancer in the Dark, Sleeping Beauty, Royal Tenenbaums, like Dazed and Confused. Like there's movies and it's funny, like just last week I was watching Dazed and Confused with some friends virtually, and I got there late, and I texted them, I was like, what's the timestamp? And they gave me the timestamp, and I hadn't even pressed play. I was fast forwarding to get there, and I just said, all right, you little freshmen, get on the ground. And I said that in a text, and my friend's like, oh my gosh, that's where we are in the movie. And I was like, oh well. And then, but I can quote that entire film, like Matt McConaughey in that movie to me, just like all. And that's the other one that if somebody says all right, I'm like, well, all right, all right, all right. Like I'm just, it's I don't know.
Yeah. The only movies for me that I remember like every word or most of the words is like Monsters Inc.
Mm.
Like for me, and I think I quote this movie too often nowadays that I don't even think about it. And like it's my favorite movie. And like I think I watched it probably more than other movies whenever I was a kid. Um, I think I could definitely say that because it was a DVD. It was like one of the first handful of DVDs we bought when I was like 3 or 4 years old. But yeah, like I'm that way with that movie specifically. There's a couple other movies I'm that way with, but most notably Monsters Inc.
It's a
But
good one. Monsters
it
Inc. is
is,
good.
yeah, yeah. Well, anyway, thank you so much for coming on. It's been nice talking with you about everything.
You as well. Yeah, thank you. I didn't win most talkative my senior year for nothing. That wasn't a fluke. And I love getting to hear from other people too, especially when they start talking to me about music.
Yeah.